is this is the number one recorded or reported injury that we have at Bliffert Lumber. When we get to the end of the call, I'm going to throw out a couple of numbers for you guys company-wide regarding how many claims we've had, how many recordables. I'll explain what all of that stuff means. But with further ado, we'll have Brian jump in and kick us off. Brian, go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Is everybody able to see the screen okay? Just showing up good?
I can see it here.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and partake in this training. Excuse me. Walking and working surfaces is a very important topic. I know it's kind of a lot of common sense falls into play on this one, but it still is a very high accident prone kind of topic. So we really need to know and understand, what our specific job site hazards are that we can identify and how we can mitigate them, but also how to stay safe so that we can go home at the end of the day just as healthy as we did when we showed up, right? So why does this matter, folks? It matters because more general industry accidents involve slip, trips, and falls than any other hazards. I know it's a big one, especially in your type of industry where there's a lot of outdoor activities that happen, right? It does account for about 15% of all accidents, accidental deaths in the workplace. So it really is a large topic that we like to make sure that we can cover all of it. So, one accident, folks, one incident can change our lives forever. But that's what we really want to avoid. And everybody has to play a role in this, because the biggest thing with slips, trips, and falls, folks, is that they're hard to mitigate, and they're sometimes a challenge to see the hazards because we kind of become complacent to them because it's stuff that we kind of walk on or step over or do every day. So this kind of helps understand those hazards a little bit more, right? So slip hazards, that's technically it's like a loss of traction, right? Where you slip on something that's either wet or usually something that makes the ground slick. It could be this time of year, right? With wet and icy grounds from rain and snow. Early morning frost or black ice is very possible as well this time of year. Sawdust buildup is a big one, folks, especially on concrete floors. It can make it very slippery. So we want to be careful of that. And then also any spills like oil, fuel, hydraulic fluid leaks, stuff like that. It's very common, especially in outdoor type forklifts where we can have some hydraulic fuel leaks just because they bounce around so much and the fittings can loosen up. But those are definitely areas where we want to make sure that if we identify those, we get them cleaned up as soon as possible. And also mud, especially in, I'm sure some of your lumber yards, right? People can track mud in, can get stuck to tires. It can spread, go on the roadways, stuff like that. So mud can be a very slippery scenario as well, just because it can be tracked into bare floors or stuff like that. So, and then honestly, what we see a lot in outdoor storage units and places where people work outdoors, in the shades, we do see some algae and moss buildup, especially in areas that doesn't get a lot of sun, and that can be very slippery as well. And trips, boy, I tell you, trip hazards are probably the most popular, right? And the reason being is because usually the trip hazards that we find, they develop over the course of the workday. For example, like loose boards or scrap lumber maybe pile, or even the fasteners, like the wire bands that hold lumber together or hold product together, they can easily become a trip or a hazard like that. So those are very work related, that kind of they really, it almost like throughout the day when you're working, right? You create messes, you clean them up, but other people may not know that, around this corner you have a pile of wood, stuff like that. A lot of uneven ground, potholes can happen, especially this time of year. And all those uneven grounds, that's one of the biggest ones. And then like in the construction field, we see a lot of like extension cords that are being pulled across, or air lines. People can get tangled in those too and can fall. Also raised edges, especially between like sidewalks. We see a lot in this time of year with the frost. The frost can heave up some parts of the concrete, some outdoor parking lots, can cause some raised edges, stuff like that. It's easy to miss those and trip on them. Okay. So, but then it comes to falls, right? So obviously if we slip or trip, it could lead to a fall, right? So there is a lot of industry standard out there where people like climb onto stacks of lumber or a pile of bricks or something to maybe do an inventory or to refasten maybe a load before they pick it up with a forklift. And this is where we see people slip, especially like this morning. We had a lot of rain last night in this area. Everything's a bit slippery, right? And we have some snow melt that melts during the day, then it freezes at night. So those are very real hazards that we need to look for. But one thing that people don't really think a whole lot about, and I'm sure you guys have quite a bit of experience of loading and unloading flatbed trailers. And sometimes you have to climb up there to either unload or to unstrap. And those flatbed floors can be very slippery, but also they're high, right? They're tall. So if you slip and fall off one of those, that could potentially be quite a hazard. So a lot of maintenance folks, we see a lot of ladders usage, right? Sometimes those ladders can fail, especially on uneven grounds or slips off of the rungs. Like if your feet are muddy and you're climbing up the ladders, that could become slippery. And then like just off-size loading docks, right? Sometimes loading docks can be hazardous because sometimes parts of the loading docks are exposed or the ramps are metal and they could get wet, right? Could become slippery that way too. And then also we see a lot of injuries from people who get on and off of forklifts a lot without using the 3 points of contact, right? Two hands, climb on with your foot, the 3 points of contact so that if you do slip, you can catch yourself, right? But coming on and off of those forklifts can become hazardous, especially with the mounting and dismounting, okay? So how do we prevent this, right? The best way that we can do is to keep our work areas organized, clean, and dry as possible, right? One thing too we can always make sure is our chemical containers are closed, right? The caps are on tight when they're not in use so that if they do actually get bumped or spill, it won't go onto the work surfaces. All materials, make sure that we're stacking and piling or racking them in a manner that prevents them from tipping over, right? Or falling down. That's very important. Ensure skids are stored flat on the floor. All right, that helps with the trip part of it. We don't want to set some bunch of pallets down if they're sitting maybe on a piece of broken pallet or something like that, so that they're oblong or off center. It can cause issues with tripping on that one too. So, and always ensure that our aisleways and our work areas are always clear, are always as clean as possible, right? Especially if there's moving machinery in those areas. So aisleways are a big one, folks, because like in your industry, there's a lot of manual labor, right? Where you're picking up boxes or lumber and you want to move it from point A to point B or load it into a client's car. All that stuff could be very dangerous because when you're carrying stuff, you have a hard time seeing your feet, right? So if your aisleways or your workways aren't clean and free of any type of hazards, you could potentially trip or fall, right? So that's the biggest thing. In our aisleways, like indoors, we see a lot of issues with like dust accumulating or sawdust or even condensation in some areas, right? The mix can make the floor slippery. So let's just make sure that if we do have a working aisle, right, where we have a lot of traffic, just make sure it stays nice and clean, right? Some other things that we can do to our floors, right, is make sure that we repair any cracks or holes that we find, right? Watch for extension cords or other trip hazards. Just make sure we keep that area nice and tidy, right? And if you identify hazards, always alert your supervisor or your safety personnel so that we can help mitigate, right, that type of hazard, maybe with a little bit of extra housekeeping or finding a way. Maybe a lot of people are going, when they have extension cords, they have the pulleys now that kind of self-wind up so that they're not laying on the ground and stuff like that. So there's lots of options that we can use to mitigate some of that stuff. But we really want to make sure that we emphasize our aisleways. That's where we see a lot of issues, right? If you're picking an order for a customer and you put a bunch of stuff down, just make sure we put it back, right? So we don't have an unknown trip hazard or somebody turns the corner, doesn't see a pile of boxes there, stuff like that. So always keep the aisleways as clear and clean as possible. As far as stairs go, folks, this picture I took at a job site. It's like a food manufacturing type facility. And the reason we took this picture is because I'd like people to understand when you have painted staircases, folks, right? Number one, it makes them very slippery. Number two, when you paint those stairs all the same color, it's kind of hard to see the steps, right? So people can easily misjudge a step or maybe overstep two of them, slip and fall, stuff like that. So just remember, if you have any staircases like this, try to make sure that we at least put grippy tape on them, right? Or something that we can see the depth difference in the stairs. It can be hard to see. So make sure we use our handrails, always, at least one hand on the handrails. Make sure you can always clearly see your path of travel, right? And make sure that when you get to the bottom, two hands at least, or at least one hand as you dismount off the stairs, just to help prevent any type of accidents, okay? So real quick, folks, in a summary, all right, slip hazards. We often see them from wet or icy surfaces, sawdust buildup, mud, and oil from machinery, all right? Those are the top ones that we see in this type of industry. Trip hazards, the most common we see is loose lumber or broken pallets, right? Sometimes strapping materials can accumulate in the work areas, uneven grounds, hoses or cracked cords left, or hoses or cords left in workways and walkways are very hazardous. So as far as fall hazards go, it can be very severe, right? Especially in your type of industry, if you're climbing up on lumber piles or whatever the case may be, or just working outside in general, loading and unloading trucks. I would imagine majority of that is done with forklifts, but there are times where we have to actually get up there and do some of that stuff. So make sure we're using the ladders appropriately, secure them. And when we're stepping on and off of loading docks, those are all potentials for fall hazards, okay? So addressing these risks, folks, really helps reduce these injuries, really helps with lost work time and accidents on the job. So the more we come together to help keep areas clean and clutter-free, the more chances that we all get to go home safe at the end of the day. So I appreciate your time. This is a short and sweet one. There is no quiz for this. So just make sure that we fill out the sign-in sheets and get those to Dan. And Dan, if you wanted to add a few things, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Brian, thank you. Everything you hit on there regarding the slips, trips, falls, walking, working surfaces, we have had a reported injury for just about every single thing that you mentioned. Broken pallets, lumber, banding, getting on and off the forklifts. We have had all of those reported as injuries in our company. So I wanted to throw a couple of numbers out just as an idea for everybody, so they kind of know where we stand with injuries within our company. So 2025 is in the rear view mirror behind us, but we like to look back to see how did we perform last year and what can we do to be better in 2026. So in 2025, we had 55 individual claims reported for injury. It seems like quite a bit. That is just over one a week. That's pretty high. Of that, 21 of those reported injury claims turned into a recordable. Now, if you don't know what a recordable is, basically it's a report of an injury claim where our employee has to seek medical treatment beyond first aid that we can do at the facilities here, or they get prescribed medication that is beyond over-the-counter medication, or they're going to miss time from work due to a restriction or anything like that. So we had 21 employees that fell into that category. That's a very high number. And this is just one category that we're looking at. So we've definitely got an opportunity to do better regarding this area. So a couple things that we're doing. Hopefully, if you're at the locations, you'll know we have somebody coming around doing a monthly safety walk. The only reason we do that is it's a fresh set of eyes. At our locations, people are there every single day, all day long. It's very easy to get comfortable with seeing how something is sitting that might not be safe. So we have somebody come around every month and just a fresh set of eyes, and they report it to the location manager so we can get better. However, all of us as a group, we need to work collectively to help mitigate some of these injuries. My goal ultimately is to send everybody home from work in the same condition in which they came, just maybe a little bit tired. But we want everybody to go home to their families in the same condition in which they came to work. And we need everybody's support and help with making this happen. So we do track our injuries every single year. We are required to post them at the locations. You'll see on our communication boards the reported number of injuries by location. Those will be on your communication boards. We have those up. Those will be posted at least till the end of April. But if you haven't had a chance, please take a look so you can kind of see what each location is doing. We've had some locations, 0 reported injuries last year. So kudos to the locations that are doing that. We've also had locations that have had, 8 to 10 reported injuries. So we've got some opportunity to do a little bit better. Now, the reason I wanted Brian to talk about this today is because it doesn't just encompass our facilities. We have a lot of outside sales members, a lot of technicians that are going on job sites. They're out in the field. So they really need to kind of keep their head on a swivel because there's a lot of things at those job sites that we cannot prevent. So we need their support in making sure that they're working safe. They're actively communicating if we've got any issues at job sites that we need to relay to the project managers. But that's it for slip, trips, and falls. My goal is to hopefully have everybody a little bit better educated around what we can do at our locations to be better in 2026. With that being said, Brian, I think we're finished unless you have anything else to add.
No, that should be it for me. Great
right,
points you brought up.
Yeah, thank you again, Brian. These are been wonderful. All of these trainings. There is no quiz this week, so or this month. So if that's a fantastic thing.
Yep.
As Brian mentioned, please make sure to fill out on the sign-in sheet and send those to me after the final session we do at 2:00 today. Just so we can kind of track participation and all of that good stuff. With that being said, wish everybody else a great rest of your day. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.